Today we're making a very simple cat out of a 1 by 1 inch piece of wood. The length of the piece of wood should be about 3 inches. The first step of the process is marking a line about 1/2 inch from the bottom and then drawing a straight line all the way to the opposite corner like this. We're going to remove this bit, and you can do that with a knife or with a saw. Next, on this edge, so not the shortest and not the longest edge, we're gonna mark about 1 inch from the top like this, and then we're gonna draw a line that's parallel to the bottom like that. Then from this line on the shorter side, so over here, we're gonna mark a spot in the middle of this line on this face, and then on this face, the longer face, we're gonna mark a spot about 1/3 of the way from this edge like that. And then we're gonna draw a straight line in a 90-degree angle from this line, so just straight up a line like that, and same over here like that. And now based on this shape we can make a very basic profile for the cat. So along these lines we can make a curve to soften the lines a little bit, something like this, to round out these sharp corners that we're not going to need. And then the same goes over here, and then there's going to be a small bump over here. We're going to connect this down here, and now I connected this line over here instead of the very corner because we're going to round this out anyways. Over here it doesn't matter that much. Now we're going to remove all of this excess wood. And make sure that you're cutting in a symmetrical fashion. If you need help with that, then you can copy the same sketch on the other side. Like that. Just a few sweeping cuts like that, and then slice off the edge like that, and then on the other side I have a knot right there. I don't think it's gonna matter in a short while. I didn't cut this edge yet because from this corner the line is gonna curve and then go straight down like that. So now there's a 90-degree angle over here, and now this can be removed, and the edge can be made rounder. Yep, that's good. Now we can make this bottom part somewhat round. So you can draw a circle, something like this. This front part can be a little bit more pointy, something like that. Kind of a little bit like an egg shape. So I didn't only take the wood away from this bottom part, but all the way up the edge. Next, on this top part, so here we have an outside curve, here we have an inside curve. Right in between them we can draw a straight line like that, horizontally. We can do that on both sides. This is going to be the front, and this is going to be the back, which means that I'm going to divide this into thirds and remove the one on the back. And that I'm going to do with sweeping cuts. Then on the front here, I can make stop cuts and remove wood from over here. I think in many cases it's easier to start with V-cuts until you get an inside corner like this, and then make a few stop cuts like this. And now this top part can be made flat so that it's like horizontal like this. That's good enough. Next we can make a sweeping cut in the middle of this face. And in this case I need to cut from both directions because the grain of the wood goes this way, so if I just cut like this, I'm gonna cut off this part too. And over here I'm leaving a few millimeters for the pause. Just something like that. Next I'm gonna make the bottom of the face over here a bit more round by taking away these sharp corners. Like that. And like that. And then we're gonna define the ears by making a V-cut over here on the top. It looks a bit disproportionate right now, but we're gonna slim down the face later. I'm starting from the edges like this and then moving closer to the middle. That's good enough for now. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of this wood away to make the head more proportionate. So it should be slightly taller this way. Next I'm gonna take the ears a little bit more back to create a longer face shape. So just a few cuts like this to make the nose the most pointy part over here. Just a simple shape like this. And then the ears can be taken even a little bit more back. A few sweeping cuts like this will do the job. Okay, now it's time to fix some proportional issues. So I can see over here that this is just way too thick. I'm gonna slim this down a little bit. And at the same time, I'm gonna take away some of these sharp edges and make the entire figure a lot more round. And over here I'm also making the head a little bit bigger by moving this line over here slightly more down. And that is very possible to do since I still have a lot of this extra mass over here. That's one of the benefits of making a very basic shape at first and then iterating on that. Reference images can be very useful at this part of the project. A few things that you can focus on here, because this is obviously a part of defining some of the features even further, even though it basically is just rounding and taking some of the unnecessary mass away. But you can make the underside of the head with two planes like this. So it can be just a V shape like that. And then over here, we want the bump to be pretty aggressive. So if you make it like just a gentle little curve like this, then it looks less like a cat and more like a lot of different animals. So we want this curve over here, especially this inside curve, to be pretty aggressive. So not taking down this bump too much, just making sure that this curve over here is tight and it's almost like a rounded out 90-degree angle between the head and the back. Something like this. Then the front part here can be slightly slimmer, so we can emphasize that egg shape over here on the bottom, extend it all the way up here, and with just a few cuts we can create two flat planes on the sides here, like this, to create this distinct part where the front limbs are going to be. And then we can make this edge rounder too, like that. Then over here we don't want this kind of symmetry. Since the cat is looking that way, this part needs to be more inward. So a few cuts over here are going to help with emphasizing this turning of the head that way. Next we're going to define the legs a little bit. So just behind the front paws over here, we're going to make a straight line up like that. The same on the other side. But before we cut any of this, we need to decide where the tail is going to be. And I'm going to put it on this side. So that means this cut is not going to go down here. Instead, there's going to be the tail like this. It goes all the way to the back. This is the other side of the tail. Like that. Now we have a tail. And first I can cut this tail to be a separate part from the body with a few V-cuts like this. Then this part above the tail needs to be vertical and not like a bump. It can be slightly like that, but not like a huge bump. And then we need to make the other side match. We don't need to make it symmetrical because we can utilize some of this wood over here to make the cat lean on one side a little bit. Otherwise, if we make this completely symmetrical, we're gonna take down the size a lot, and then that affects all the other features. But we can take a little bit away from the bottom like this, make it slightly rounder, and now we have a pretty decent shape like that. A few cuts over here, a little bit higher, and then the general shape is more like the cat is leaning over here just a little bit. And now we can make these cuts. So over here, this one, and over here, this one. Just a few V-cuts like this. You can use the tip of the blade like this, and that's good. The same on the other side. Just be careful and don't cut the tail. Like that. And then there's this one still. So the other side of the tail needs to be defined also. Just a few V-cuts like this. And it's good. Then on the front here, before we can separate the front limbs from each other, we need to define the paws a little bit more. And for that we're gonna make a few V-cuts. Just like that, and then we're gonna let this curve go smoothly into the start of the paws. Like that. And now we can separate the paws and the rest of the front limbs from each other with this Y shape. So what this does is it defines the chest also. And this is then, again, just some V-cuts like this. It's kind of like a pyramid cut with a very short one side. So the short side is over here. but you're gonna probably have to make a few cuts this way to get rid of the chips. Like that. Next, over here, we're going to define the back leg. So we're going to make a line like this, and then a curve like this. And on this side where the tail is, it's just going to be this curve, because the foot is going to be behind the tail. And then we can make a pyramid cut, a three-sided pyramid cut over here, and we get this shape. And then with just a few V cuts, I can continue this line to be part of the shape like that. Just a few iterations over here to define the shape of the legs a little bit better. I'm making the sides of the legs slightly more flat. And then we can make these two curves again with V-cuts. And once you have a decent shape, you can flatten out the top so that it kind of looks like this was made with stop cuts, but it isn't, since cutting this way is kind of difficult due to the grain of the wood. But we can cut away from the leg like this and get the same effect. And then the same on the other side. Over here, we can separate the paws from the tail by creating this V-cut between them. Like that. Before we make some of the final details on the face, I'm gonna refine the shape of the body a little bit. So there's a few parts that are still slightly disproportionate, a few parts with unnecessarily sharp corners, like over here. So I'm gonna round those sharp edges, and then we're gonna move on to the face. I'm also gonna create this kind of a twisting shape over here. So this a bit pointier part should connect to here to create that twisted neck, which means I need to remove some of this wood from over here and create this slightly twisted shape. Make a more distinct crease over here on this side, and then, like I said, take away some of this wood from over here. Like that. This is the point where you can finish the proportions, so if there's still something that's slightly out of proportion, you can fix it now. Over here I had the shoulder line slightly too much down. It should be higher. And then I'm gonna make this chest area a bit rounder, like that. Next we're gonna move on to the face. So the basic shape of the face is that there's going to be an inside curve over here. Just a small one. Like that. The nose can be a little bit rounder. And I'm making these sweeping cuts around the snout, all the way to the sides like this. Then I'm gonna make the face a little bit more symmetrical, so this part is slightly too pointy. The ears still look a little bit weird. Making a few sweeping cuts in the middle here to create a flatter part also, like that. And then from back here, I'm rounding the ears. Notice here that they're kind of pointing forward, so the front is kind of almost vertical, and then the back is slightly more sloped, like that. Over here I'm just adjusting the thickness of the neck because it's still wider this way than this way, and it should be pretty even. Then by rounding this edge, we get very, very close to the final shape. So we have an outside curve here and an inside curve here. And that's a pretty simple cat-like side profile. I'm making very, very small cuts over here so that I can get a smoother, nicer, rounder shape. The eyes are just going to be two lines like this. And these we're going to make with V-cuts. So there's a line like this, and then another line like that, and together they make this angular shape. So you can just press the blade into the wood like that, and then from the lower side make a cut. Basically like a stop cut, like this.